two friends, two entrepreneurs are sitting together having a meal. And one of them tells the other his goals. And he tells him what he wants to achieve and what he's looking to accomplish, both in his business and his personal life. And the other guy says to him, man, I don't think that's reasonable. I think it's a bit of an unreasonable expectation. And it's a very common situation. This is obviously a made-up story, but it's a very common one, where you have somebody telling somebody else that what they want is unreasonable. Now, usually what happens is that somebody will listen to that and be like, oh, maybe I do need to change what I want. Maybe I need to be more reasonable. But the reality is that the reason most people think that something is unreasonable is because they also have their own fears and insecurities they're projecting onto your situation. Yes, it is unreasonable perhaps to achieve certain things if you're weighed down by such immense insecurities, by fears, and by self-doubt. So every time you're trying to do something, that is also there in the background. So yes, it is perhaps unreasonable to accomplish all that if you have that dragging you back. But what happens is when some people don't have that and they're being told by other people that what they want is unreasonable, it causes them to doubt themselves. And it's something that I see way too often, and that's what we really want to talk about today. How you can achieve what most people will think is unreasonable, and why if you're not doing things that most people think is unreasonable, there's probably a problem with how you're living your life, in my opinion.
Yeah. And you mentioned one conversation there. Actually, it's society at large will have this feeling of unreasonableness and what is acceptable and what isn't. And that permeates into people as kind of a narrative as to what they can and can't do. So as you say, average by definition is what most people are. Therefore, if you are being held, but if what you are doing seems unreasonable, that's probably a good indicator, flag or marker to head towards it. Yeah. And on an individual level, when you have these individual conversations, then another motivation for people to drag you down is because they fear that if you get better, then they'll have to do something about themselves. And the ego doesn't like that.
Yeah, I think even if you get to go deeper than that, you're challenging a foundational worldview of what they think is reasonable and unreasonable to them.
Yeah.
And like that's the real stuff that why people get so defensive and sometimes get so aggressive about this. They're like, no, you're being unreasonable. Mm-hmm. What they're really saying, and they without recognizing it, they're like, you're challenging me here in a way that I am not comfortable with.
Yeah.
Because what I think is reasonable for me is not what you just said.
Yeah.
So either you're very wrong or you're pointing out something that I don't like to hear right now.
Yeah.
And that's really the big thing about it.
Yeah. And I might actually have to do some work and then I risk failure. And that would be bad. And this is all subconscious, I feel. I don't think this happens necessarily at a conscious level. A really classic example is when someone goes on a diet and tries to lose a bit of weight. Everyone's like, no, you don't need to lose weight. You look fine. Everything's okay. And that's subconsciously dragging people down because they don't want to have to do anything about their own health. It's just super common, super, super common.
Yeah. I think it's like people don't like having their beliefs challenged. Most people don't, unless they're very, very intentional about it. And when you say, like, this is where I'm going to, you call your shot, so to speak, I'm going big, this is what I'm going to accomplish. And for them, it seems unreasonable, like that they can't do it. They immediately get defensive about it. Because they're like, what does this mean about me if this person is doing that? And I think what I've seen is that what it probably means about most people is that they haven't done the work to clear the debris that's causing them to not be able to do that. It's like, when we look at entrepreneurship, really clarify what creates a really good entrepreneur, someone who's able to identify the problems really, really well, and then solve the correct problems and do it in a way that's pretty audacious. Those three things. If you do those well, you'll grow. Now, if you have two people, one who that's all he needs to worry about, and then you have another person who also has to worry about his own self-doubt and insecurities and how he puts his projection of sense of self onto each and every problem in the business, what he will be able to achieve will be far less than the other person. So the other person, what he's going to be able to achieve is going to seem unreasonable to that guy. And he's going to label him as unreasonable. And if he tells him what he wants to achieve, that's going to make this other guy mad. Because he's going to feel to him like unreasonable, like, why can he do it? Why can't I do it? And you get defensive. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think it manifests as discomfort, as anxiety, as stress, as resent, as multiple things. Maybe not anger.
I've seen people mock other people sometimes. Yeah. It's a defensive mechanism.
Yeah, comedy, joking, self-deprecation.
Yeah,
red flag.
And that's the thing. So it's like, I think anger people mock. That's how they say a lot of times it comes out. That's what I mean by that. Like people mock each other because it's like It's just their stuff, but they're trying to project it onto you. They're not, like how you said, aware enough to be able to say, you know what, something here is poking me. I don't like it. I need to work on myself. The easier route is to just kind of dismiss it. And a way to dismiss it is by mocking it.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So that was a little tangent I wanted to open the pod with. And what we really want to do today is I want to share the framework that I've found that helps people really become unreasonable and achieve unreasonable things. But most people think is completely unreasonable. And what I mean by that is not just being able to tunnel and only do one thing and be singular focused and succeed in that, but really have this kind of life that seems unreasonable to a lot of people. And to call their shot and audaciously say, this is what I want, and to actually go for it and succeed. And it's going to be kind of a 6-part, it's called 6 pillars to this kind of process. And that's what I really want to share today and give you guys really the concrete framework of how you can achieve something that most people will think is really unreasonable. Sound good?
Yeah, no, this sounds great. And I just want to recap for my own benefit. So the 3 things that you mentioned that people need to be a good entrepreneur, to be audacious.
So again, there's a lot of things, but I think when I was talking about how if you're weighed down by personal, like, so you need to be audacious. You have to have an audacious goal, like to really do something big. That's a prerequisite.
Yeah.
Then you have to, like, logically, you have to be really capable of identifying the problem correctly, what needs to be resolved. And then you have to know the correct solution to it. And you have to be able to execute. Now, all 3 of those things are going to get really, compromised if you also have all this internal baggage that you're projecting onto every decision you make in the business. Well, if we make this mistake, or if we do this, or if we do that, will that mean about me? Will people judge me? Am I good enough? All that kind of stuff. And so going for the big things that are going to stretch you and will, by definition, cause you to slip up a little bit here or there, that seems unreasonable because you can't handle it.
Yeah, exactly that. So having been through this process before myself, having these 3 things is like the rocket ship. And then what you're going to describe now is like taking the weight, the ballast off to make it easier to take off and to keep moving. No?
We're going to go beyond that. Like we did that in one of the previous episodes. What I want to do today is give a whole arc. Like, how do you do that from start to finish?
Yeah.
How do you become that individual that can achieve what most people think is unreasonable? What's the process to take from step 1 to step 6? And you're going to kind of have to rinse, repeat as you go up and up in like levels of the game. But this is like a framework that if you keep using, you will keep going up and up and up. And this is what I've seen. This is what I've seen works.
And I think it's worth just highlighting that bit as well, is this isn't a 6-step thing that you do once and forget about, because you're at a certain level. 1 is at a certain level right now. So the first cycle will take you to here. And then there's new baggage, new problems, new things unsurface. So then you do another cycle, you get to the next level, and it keeps going up. This is an ongoing thing, but each time you're rising to a higher level. Yeah.
And you'll see as we talk about it, it's not just the baggage. It's even something as simple as goals. Like I said, it's cycles. I call it seasons. It's like you're going to have a certain goal for a certain season. You're going to reach that goal. And we're going to talk about like the 6-step process that can help you reach that goal. But once you reach it, you're going to have to readjust. You're going to have a new goal. I mean, you don't have to, but you'll probably want to have a new goal.
Yeah.
And then everything's going to have to adjust it as well. Everything kind of grows with that.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah. Let's go.
Great. So first thing you got to do if you want to have something unreasonable, you got to clarify what that is. You got to set your target. Like if you don't have a target, you're not going to hit it. You got to get clear on what your end goal is and what you want. And I'm saying that not from a place to inspire you or for it to be like very kind of like fluffy and woo and get a vision board, but to say, this is what I'm trying to do. So if this is what I'm trying to do, I can now start to understand how I need to be, who I need to become that could achieve this kind of thing. And what you want to do, like how we're talking about cycles and seasons, you want to get clear on what the end goal is, but also like what's the actual target for the next season, for the next cycle, for the next 6 months. What do you want to accomplish? Because if you have that very clear, you can start distilling who do I need to change into and evolve into in order to accomplish that. Is this making sense? Phase 1.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And what I would just add in there is that your first iteration of what you want to achieve will be different from your second and third and fourth iteration, not just because you're hitting goals, but because you are able to see the potential as being much, much bigger.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that, and you're gonna see how it all wraps together nicely. That's phase 6. We're gonna talk about that, but there's a reason it all flows together.
Yeah, Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Let's do it.
All right. So that's phase one. You first got to identify like what the end goal is, what the seasonal goal is, and then set as a standard what you need to do and who you need to become. What is this kind of person that would make achieving this goal of yours and the end goal kind of inevitable? Because honestly, external success is just a downstream effect of who you are internally. So if you can figure out who internally you need to be, that success will come. Might take longer, might be a little shorter, but it will come. It's a downstream effect. So after you have that wrapped up, you got to figure out your effective mindset. Now, we kind of talked about this before a little bit. There's no such thing as really the good or a bad mindset. There's just a mindset that's effective in getting you towards a specific goal, and an ineffective mindset of getting you towards that specific goal. Like when you do a gap analysis, and you say, this is where this person currently is, this is where he wants to get to. Like him specifically, this is where he is, this is where he wants to get to. And you got to figure out what's going to be the effective mindset that's going to be the bridge to help him cross that divide. What does he need to focus on? How does he need to behave? Is this making sense so far?
Yeah. And that's step 2, right?
That is step 2.
Okay.
We first figure out the goal. Now we got to figure out, this is kind of like the operating system. The internal operating system he has. How does he think? What does he do?
So the goal, who you have to be to reach that goal is the kind of one and the same, but then the mindset that person who you need to be to reach that goal is then step 2.
Yeah. Step 2 is how you actually break that down.
Yeah.
Like not just like a high level, it's like, oh, I need to be someone who's really audacious, someone who's courageous, someone who delegates, whatever it may be. But this is how you really break it down. And you've been through the arena. The way we do it is pretty simple. Like we say, okay, if this is the kind of person, this is the standard you're trying to meet, what are the top 3 values that you should hold? And what we absolutely do not ask ever is, what are your top values? We don't do that. Because what we're trying to say here is, again, we're always trying to force an evolution, an internal revolution where you can grow. And asking somebody what are their top values, it's like, it's a nice question. It's a fluffy question because it makes everybody feel really aligned, but it doesn't actually push the envelope. It doesn't say, okay, how can you grow here? Because we're saying there's a gap here. Like we said, we did a gap analysis. There's a gap. What values are you missing in order to evolve from the person you are today into the person you need to become to achieve what you want?
That's the key difference, I feel, because when people identify their values, they kind of see things which either they have or they would like to have. And it's like, yeah, integrity, blah, 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 whatever. They find these lists and pick out words which make them feel warm and fuzzy inside. But this seems specifically, okay, I've got a goal. I need to get to it. What is missing for me to get to that? What do I need to embody every day to get to this? So the values are actually your weaknesses or your gaps, and those are the things that you need to focus on. Yes,
and it's like you're saying, it's hyper intentional. It's hyper intentional for, this is where I currently am, this is what I'm getting the next season. Like for example, one of my values, I do this for myself as well. One of my values for this past quarter, after I was really burnt out, I had a lot of traveling, I had COVID, I got long COVID, it was really bad. One of my primary values was recovery. That was my values. One of the things I need to value recovery. I need to be disciplined about this. It's not my natural tendency to take a step back, but right now, what will serve me in getting me to the next level is to recover and go slow so I can really go fast later.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's all about understanding that and putting into perspective. Like, what do you need right now to get to the next level? Not just like, what is a nice value to have? Is a general question.
Yeah. And as is kind of obvious, these will change over time. These will change with seasons, with goals. And that's okay.
I want to say, like, beyond that, it's okay. It's like, if they're not changing, there's a problem. Yeah. And it's like the season, let's just also to clarify, I like to view these seasons in 6 months periods. Every 6 months, you should kind of do this framework again and figure out, okay, where do I need to go? What things need to change? Because things will need to change as you evolve. It's just what it is. So is phase number 2 clear, the effective mindset?
Phase number 2 is clear. And I think I might be jumping the gun somewhat, but just values are great, but they need to be associated with actions.
Yes. Oh, sorry. We didn't clarify that. So after you figure out the values, you got to distill rules. And you got to figure out, okay, what specific rules would enforce these values? So for example, if my value was recovery, a very clear rule I have to have is that I finish working by 4. I can't play around with that. Another very simple rule I need to have is that I go to the beach every other day with my dog and we go for a long walk, because that helps me unwind. These are rules that say, if I follow these rules, it's very hard to argue that I'm living this value.
Yeah.
And like you saw, it's like they're very tangible things, the things that I can measure. They have a quantitative measure to them. It's not just like, oh, I try to take it a bit easier, because that doesn't help anybody.
That's
you
bullshit.
can always BS yourself. Yeah, exactly. So that's really the big thing. Is this making sense?
Yeah, and just to double emphasize that, they have to be real world, real time, actionable things like, where in the last week did you compromise this value of recovery, and how can you fix it this next week? And for you, stopping work at 4 o'clock, boom. And every time you don't do that, you're compromising your core value. So no shit, you don't reach your goal. It's a brutal and whatever measure of what you want to achieve. Like,
it's clear. It's
Yeah.
like the point of having an effective mindset and getting this stuff really clear is that in order, like, evolution isn't easy, but when it's complicated and it's vague, it becomes infinitely harder. So if you can create clarity and really simplify, what are the things that you need to do? You can just say, if I live by these 9 rules for the next 6 months, I'm going to evolve. Again, it won't necessarily be easy, but it'll be infinitely simpler. And that simplicity does add a measure of ease into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great. And I think finally, kind of what we're getting into this is that you also have to have a system to track this. You have to be able to measure it. Like, this is not something you do once and then you forget it. This is something that you keep doing consistently in order to track your progress. And also in order to keep aware of this, keep a certain level of awareness. Like, what we'd like to do is once a week, people have this tracker where we figure out all their rules or values. And once a week we go in, like, how you doing? 1 to 10. And it serves 2 purposes. 1, to really debrief and see, why is this not happening? What's going on here? Which we're going to get into in a little bit. And also, like, just to keep them top of mind. This is something you're trying to optimize for. Don't forget, we know you have your natural tendencies. We're trying to build new tendencies that get you to the next level. So you need to be aware of these. These need to be top of mind.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
The other thing to add there as well is that, this all seems very straightforward up till now, and it is straightforward. But when you define these rules, that also feels warm and glowy inside. The crunch point is when it gets to 4 o'clock and you're like, just one more email, just one more call, but it's really important, blah, blah, bullshit. That's when you have to have the oomph, the courage, the whatever it is to draw a line despite the consequences, because this is what you have defined. And for me, that was one of the biggest game changers. Just this concept of courage. I mean, courage doesn't mean anything. Courage is this fluffy, horrible word that everyone throws around. What is courage? Courage is taking the action in the moment when you've got a difficult decision and taking the hard choice, right? So hard choice, easy life, easy choice, hard life. And that's literally it. And for me, once it was broken down to that level of granularity, I was like, so that is how I improve my life. I wait for these little difficult decisions to come up, and I take the appropriate action, however difficult it is.
And I think the beauty of it, what you saw, is that it made it easy for you to take the hard choices because you at least knew what they were. Like, this is what I mean by that, though. It's like, it's so, when something's difficult, it's so easy to BS ourselves out of it. It's so easy because we can always justify it somehow. Like, we've talked about this in previous podcasts. We can always tell some kind of story to ourselves and bullshit our way out of it. But because you've done the legwork ahead of time and really clearly defined that, I know this is what I should be doing.
Yeah.
I know this is the right thing. I know that in hindsight, I'll be happy that I did this. Be proud that I did this.
Yeah. And, to add another layer there, when you don't do it, that isn't the time to beat yourself up, to call yourself, names or whatever. It's a point at which you reflect, okay, why was this week my keeping to the value a 6 out of 10? Okay, because these were the decisions that I didn't hit. Why did that happen? What can I adjust for the week going forward? If you were perfect the first time you iterated, you would be superhuman. So we're not expecting perfection, but iteration is the key here. So, okay, that was awful. No shit, it was the first time you did it. How can you improve it next time? And that improvement is what's going to change the game, rather than being perfect and then beating yourself up when you're not.
Yeah, so I kind of disagree.
Oh, hit me. Let's do it.
I think that iteration is not the optimal way to do it. I think the reason, and we're going to go into this, phase number 3 is basically clearing up any emotional issues that could be getting in your way from acting out on them. So in phase 1, we clarified the end goal. Phase 2, we clarified, like, how do you need to conduct yourself in order to get to that end goal? If you were a machine, if you were a robot, that's all you needed. Target, programming, good. But the reality is we're all humans. And we do have our emotions, we have our doubts, we have all the things that make us say sometimes other people are unreasonable, whatever it may be. We have all that stuff that gets in our way. So if you don't clear that out, that's usually the primary reason you're not able to live out on these new values, these new rules. Because you might want to say, like, for example, for me, I knew recovery was a big thing. I knew I had to take Bo out for a walk every other day. But I also still had an insecurity that if I don't work hard, I'm not going to be able to achieve success. Because at one time in the military, I quit. Like, that still rings in there. So that's something that I have to be aware of. Because that's what can pull me in the wrong direction. And beyond just trying to reiterate and trying to say, okay, I didn't do this. Why didn't I do this? That really helps me get to the core of it. And to also know that, like, every day at 9, when I want to take Bo for a walk, I'm going to have that voice in my head. It's going to tell me, Itamar, you need to work hard. Otherwise, you're going to fail and you're going to suffer. Because in knowing that and the ability to anticipate that, it makes it so much more doable. It's like being able to, like, no, okay, you're going to go into an ice bath instead of just getting a bucket of ice water, like, thrown into your face first thing in the morning. It's that difference. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And you said it yourself. It's going to make it so much easier. And what you've described is multiple ways of making it as easy as possible. The reality is it's still fucking hard.
Exactly. Success is hard. And that's the thing. It's like really climbing a mountaintop and like getting what you want in life, doing things that are reasonable, it's still hard. There's no need to bullshit about that.
Yeah.
But you want to make as much effort as possible to make it as easy as possible. And again, removing that weight, getting clear on where you're going, all that thing. These are things that give you the best possible opportunity to achieve something that is difficult.
Yeah, and without this system, it's impossible. It's literally impossible.
I don't want to say that. I mean, people have achieved it.
No. But I'm not saying this system is unique and special, but it's a variation on this system of setting goals, living to certain values, whatever, however you want to word it. Like if you have a fluffy goal, you're never going to achieve it.
You're not going to stumble by accident to success.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this system makes it as easy as possible to reach the goal. Yeah. It's still difficult because success and doing unreasonable things by definition is difficult. Yeah. And I think all I'm saying, and we're saying the same thing, is on that off chance that we human and stumble and are not 10 out of 10, all I'm saying is, how do I do better next time?
Yeah.
There's no,
So let's go forward, and then we're going to go back to this, and it's going to sink in together really well.
Let's do it.
Okay. So phase number 3, let's get into phase number 3. Phase number 3 is mental block awareness, mental and emotional block awareness. Like how we said, I know I have these insecurities, I have these issues. It's first bringing awareness to them and flushing them out. And we've done previous episodes on this, so we're not going to get into it too much. And then phase number 4 is we also have resolution, the toolkit that we give you, and how you can figure out, like, okay, this is what happened in the past. This is how I think. Is it true? Is it not? Can I let go of this? And how can I also catch this as it comes up if there are situations that I'm not prepared for? Now, what you want to do, we said, like, you have to have a system, how we use a tracker. On the left-hand side, you have your values that boil down into rules, and you give yourself a 1 to 10 of them. On the right-hand side, you have your insecurities or your primary biases that pull you in the wrong direction. The top 3 of them. And you say, on 1 to 10, how much have these been affecting me? Because if, for example, you're doing really well on the tracker, but these are still like flaring up, they're really, really affecting your insecurities and your doubts, you need to focus on them. If they're not affecting you anymore, but still something with your tracker is like you're doing everything well, but you're not achieving the results you want, something in your tracker's got to change. And it's a really good way to understand, like, as long as these 2 things are working and your goals are being achieved, you're on the right path. But if something is just completely out of whack, that's what you can give focus on. Because in theory, if you have these 2 things locked in, you know exactly what you should be doing and you're doing it correctly, and none of your internal stuff is pulling you in the wrong direction, you should be really streamlining towards your goal. And I think always seeing that front and center, it really gives you that clarity. Like, okay, this is what I'm anticipating. Like we said, it's going to make it easier because I know I'm going to anticipate these kind of pulls against me. And this is also what I know I should be focusing on. Keep my eyes on the prize and let's go for it.
Yeah, I can't remember what you called them in the arena when I did it, but it was you almost have these programs, these pre-programs for when you get into a situation, how you overcome. When this happens, then I will. Yeah,
the mental models.
Mental models.
The mental models. Yeah. We had mental models and we had indicators. So mental models, what Emil is saying is that there are some really high impact events that you want to prepare for. Like maybe like once a week, you have the big staff meeting that you're nervous about. You have to fire this employee. You have to hire this employee. You have to have that tough conversation. with your spouse, or like honestly, even with yourself sometimes, those are things that you can prepare ahead of time. And you can say, I know when I'm going to have this, I'm going to have a bit of a flare up emotionally because I have this kind of insecurity, this kind of fear, this kind of doubt around it. And when that happens, I'm going to behave in a certain way because I know that I shouldn't live by that. That was false. This insecurity shouldn't hold me like that. And then what we also have is indicators. Indicators is a way for you to know when your emotions are starting to flare, when you're getting away from a logical place and more towards an emotional place. It's not serving you. So for example, some people, clench their jaw. Some people have a tense stomach all of a sudden. Some people have certain thoughts that go on in their head. Some people just feel a certain way. They feel really anxious. They feel really scared. They feel really nervous. They feel really excited, even like in a weird way. So knowing those kind of things, you can also catch them in the moment. You say, oh, if I'm having this thought right now, I need to take a step back and catch my breath for a sec, because that probably means I'm getting emotional. I'm not doing logical things, and it's going to steer me away from what I know I should be doing in order to evolve to the next place I want to evolve to.
Yeah.
Is that clicking?
Yeah, yeah,
bringing it in together well?
No, for sure. So it's a couple of ways of identifying when the effective mindset could potentially fail. Exactly. And it's either through, situations which have caused it in the past, and then you kind of preempt it with a program, with a mental model, or if it's happening on the fly, when I clench my jaw or when I pace, then I'm agitated and emotional, and I need to stop myself, bring myself to the moment, bring awareness to what's going on, and see if I can figure something out on the fly.
Yeah. Or even just pause the situation.
Yeah.
Like that's an interesting thing. Like we don't always, even if I'm having a tough conversation, let's say with my spouse, and I recognize that I'm getting emotional, there's nothing wrong with me saying, hey, hon, you know what? I think I'm getting a bit heated here. Do you mind if we take a break for a second? Because I don't want to put anything on you that is not fair to you. Like, now that I know it's okay, I think that would be appreciated from the other side. And to kind of summarize what you summarized for me, one is a way to be proactive, and one is a way to still be effectively reactive.
Yeah.
Fair?
Yeah, for sure.
Great. So we have phase 1, clarify what you want. 2, create the effective mindset. 3, be aware of what mental blocks you have. 4, resolve them as best as you can and at least know how to be effectively reactive. And then we move on to phase number 5. Phase number 5, after you've done all this, like again, things are pretty good, but you can't take everybody with you to the mountaintop. There's a quote I love by Colin Chapman. He's the founder of the F1 Lotus team. And he said, to add quickness, create lightness. Power makes you faster on the straights, but lightness makes you faster everywhere. And basically, this is the whole model that we did about addition by subtraction. Like, there's all this stuff we've built up in our lives that is weighing us down. Some of it is external stuff, like let's say certain people that we have around us, certain things in our environment, and some of it is internal stuff. It's the habits that we form, the stories or excuses that we tell ourselves, certain identities or labels that we put on ourselves, like, oh, I'm an introvert. Oh, I'm not good at this. Oh, I can't do that. And we got to figure out, what of that do we need to eliminate? We need to throw away because it doesn't serve us. And it's something that we have to get rid of.
Yeah, cut loose the weight, the extra weight, the baggage.
Yeah.
Mental and physical.
And I think this one is a really hard one for people, this part of the process, because all of a sudden, it's not about just putting on more stuff. It's about really aggressively removing something. And the way I say, like, we see this a lot with entrepreneurship. It's like, instead of cutting the project that doesn't work, it's much more tempting to try to throw a bunch of different things at it instead of just saying, this doesn't work. And especially also when you get into human connections, when a lot of people have these back at home friends or first day of school friends, these are people that you've known for a long time, not because you were intentional about saying, these are people that I really value, either because I really have a great time with them and they lift me up, or because they're good for me. They're just people that we happen to know and we grew up with them, or we were like next to them when we just started our entrepreneurial journey or whatever it may be, and we're still with them. Even though they do the opposite of lift us up. And I think for a lot of people saying, I need to cut these people out of my life in order to make room for people that can lift me more and can be a more positive influence for me, is not something they give themselves permission to do. And for me, the biggest thing that's been helpful to help what I've seen help a lot of people is coming at this from a place of humility. I am not an asshole because I'm telling, oh, I don't want to be with this person in my life anymore. I don't want them in here anymore. I'm going to cut them off. It's not that I'm being an asshole. It's that I'm deciding to embrace humility and accept the fact that if I have this gap here that I'm trying to bridge and I want to climb this mountaintop, I'm not Superman. I can't put everybody on my back and expect to take them with me, especially if they don't even want to go, especially if they don't want to go. And it doesn't also have to be forever. Maybe I can get to that mountaintop and then I can really see who wants to come and I can help them come with me. I can bring them up then. And I think embracing that humility is what gives most people the permission to cut things off that they need to cut off.
Yeah. That was a huge one for me in particular. And one experience which I found helpful was, there's people that aren't serving your goal and you don't want to let go. And it takes an extended period of time to let them go. Eventually you get to that point and you drift apart or, whatever happens. And then you can see with hindsight that should have happened many months, years ago. Most people will have an example like that in their lifetime, which is awesome. Use that as an anchor and then look at the people who you're doing that with currently and maybe accelerate that process. Because look, it's going to happen anyway. Dragging it out is just going to make it more painful and less likely that once you reach the goal, you're going to be able to rekindle that relationship if you want to.
Yeah. And it's like, it doesn't serve anybody to drag it out. There's going to be some kind of subconscious resentment going both ways.
Exactly.
You're going to resent them because you feel like they're holding you back. They might resent you because they don't want to change and you're putting something in their face they don't want to see. And it's about recognizing that at a certain point, it's not a fit anymore. And that's just what it is.
Yeah. People don't necessarily want to be dragged up for whatever reason, but that's their own shit to deal with. You can't coach them into that. You can support them, you can inspire them, but you can't.
It's not your responsibility.
It's not your responsibility at all.
It's not your responsibility. And that's the thing to accept. So that was kind of the personal side. And I want to give a kind of running list here. I do want to share this because this could be helpful for some people. So on the personal side, the thing I tell people to think about is like, what habits do you need to remove that you've accumulated? But again, just from random habits. There weren't intentional habits that get you from here to there. What excuses do you need to eliminate? What we just talked about, what social commitments or people? What behavior of yours or certain character that you exhibit? Like jealousy, anger. Jealousy is a big one. I see it a lot of times. A lot of guys, instead of thinking, oh, these people around me are succeeding, this should be inspiring me, they're like, oh, why can't I do it? Why do they get to do it? You got to let go of that. You got to throw that away and say, okay, these are actually people that can lift me up. I'm happy about it. Thank God I have these people around me. Then we talked about the stories that we tell ourselves. We said this in one of the podcasts. We can always justify certain things by telling us these kind of stories. Like, oh, there's more pride in doing it alone. It's a bigger accomplishment. All these kind of nonsense stories. And then finally, again, like that kind of identity or the labels. Like, I'm an introvert or I do this. I'm the kind of person who does this. Like, you have to always be ready for a state of internal revolution if you want to change and if you want to get the effects of change, the positive effects of it. Those are internal things, the personal level. Then on the business level, you got to figure out what also do I need to let go of? Again, like your business might have been at a certain point where you started, or maybe even a year ago or 6 months, and it's torpedoed up. So now things have to change with it. That venture or idea that you were going to pursue, that you started already pursuing, forget about that sunk cost fallacy. It doesn't serve you anymore. Where you currently are in your level of your business, that's irrelevant. That product, it might have to go. You got to think about it. That employee as well. Did I hire the wrong employee back then? Or is this employee now in the wrong seat and it needs to be changed? Regardless of the fact that I'm connected with him, that I feel uncomfortable at having this conversation, like what's the truth of the situation here? There are certain KPIs, certain goals that really need to be let go of. That you're doing this out of ego because, oh, it's hard to let go of this. We've already started that whole sunk cost fallacy stuff.
A nice tool for the sunk cost fallacy is to say to yourself, if you know what you know now, would you do what you did then?
Yeah, I love that. I think about it a bit differently. Like if you weren't involved in this right now, if you weren't involved at all, would you want to start it? Would you want to take it on your plate? And like, that's a question it's a very pokey question. I ask myself that sometimes and I get mad at myself almost. Like this puts the truth in my face so obviously, but I think it's a very powerful one.
Yeah, whichever framework works. But if someone externally comes in and says, "Why is that guy employed there?"
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking. Yeah, yeah. So that's step 5. Is step 5 clear?
Crystal.
All right. So now we go into phase 6. Phase 6, how you're saying it, like your goals are going to change. And when we started about talking phase 1, this is where they change. This is where you really step into who you are. Because now that we've gotten clear on what you want, we got an effective mindset, we removed a lot of the emotional clutter that's getting in your way, that's weighing you down. And we also removed any internal and external baggage that you got to get out of your life. You have to reprocess, be like, wait, who is this person in front of me in the mirror? And what should they be achieving? And that's when we go through that kind of person X. And there's been another episode, I think episode 5 or 6 with Ben McAdam, that he talked about it. And there's a great breakdown there if you want to go deeper into this. But basically, you have to look and assess, who am I right now? Honestly, not how do I feel about myself, but who am I right now? What are my current abilities? And what should I be looking to achieve, both on a personal level and a business level? Like, what is my business? Forget about how I might feel as a CEO, my level of competency, my level of confidence, whatever it may be. What is my current business right now? What are the assets that it has, its ability? What is the reputation it has? All these things. What should a business like that have as its goals?
Yeah.
And sometimes that forces a lot of this like reality. It's like, oh, wow, I have been playing small.
Yeah, sorry, you were saying? No, you've said this before and it fits here perfectly. If someone else had my exact skill set, mindset, assets, business, blah, 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 whatever, what are they achieving? Could they achieve more? Like, why am I here and someone else is here with the exact same everything, or even less sometimes?
Yeah, it's because they go for it. And I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves permission to go for it. And the point of this last pillar is to force you to see reality. What should you be going for? Because now you're armed with a toolkit. You know how to do this. This is a skill set. You've learned how to do this. This is a skill, getting clear on what you want, creating an effective mindset. You learn those skills. Getting clear on what's blocking you emotionally or mentally there. It's a skill. Learning how to resolve. That's another skill you picked up. You put in your toolkit. Boom. And then finally also learning to remove the things that are getting in your way. So now that you have all those skills, once you can also clarify what you should be doing, because when you assess things logically and like rationally, just black and white, write these things on paper, then you can really say, oh, wow, okay, I can go to a whole new level. And that's when the cycle starts again. Because then you're like, oh, wow, this whole new level, that's the goal. So if that's the goal now, what does my effective mindset need to be in order to reach that? And if that's what I'm trying to do, what potential mental blocks will I reach here? Will I see here at this height? This new height?
Will you uncover? Will come up.
Exactly. Yeah. And you'll probably see that it's the same thing in a different way. It's like we have an expression in Hebrew, it's like same lady, different dress. It's kind of like that. You're going to be similar things, but just in a different way they come out. And you now have a toolkit, if you do this, to really become unreasonable and live an unreasonable life and achieve unreasonable things. Like, this is what I found has helped the most amount of people. And there's a reason this arc exists as well. I think you wanted to bring this up before we got on here. We talked about therapy and this and what's the difference. And I think you wanted to bring this up a little bit.
Yeah. So I resonate. I like therapy. Therapy is great. I resonated with this from a achieving things point of view, because it has very distinct steps that you follow, which make logical sense and which drive you in an upward motion. Therapy is fluffy. It doesn't necessarily have a goal. You just kind of float, and it has a place. I don't want to poo-poo it because I love it, but this is very, very different. This is very action goal oriented and focused, and it will help you heal things. It will help you level up. It will help with personal development. It is powerful.
Yeah, I want to say from a different perspective. I was saying it has basically you're saying it has a continuum to it. There's a progression to it, if you will.
There's a path and a progression.
Yes. And the reason that we don't first, and people have asked me this, like, why don't we do first the whole stuff of like getting clear on your mental blocks and getting those resolved so then you can see your goals more clearly and all that. Why don't we do that first? And I'm like, because then you have a problem. What happens a lot of times in therapy is that people go into their past, they try to fix things, and they do. Sometimes they're able to heal and let go of a lot of things. So basically what happens then is that they remove the foundation of their beliefs in the world and how they operate, what they should be doing, how they should be thinking. And then they kind of stare into this abyss. Their whole foundations become very, very shaky because there are no more foundations. They've taken them out. So what we do, and the reason we do it in this order, is because we want to like basically have pre-built in foundations that you can just slide right in. Once you remove the stuff that's not there anymore and shouldn't be there anymore, you have this new stuff to slide right in. And because it's there, things don't feel shaky. They actually feel really exciting. But instead of like first trying to remove those foundations and then kind of being lost, which a lot of people feel like in therapy, they're like, well, I don't know where to go from here. I don't know what to do next. We figure out what to do next ahead of time. I see you rubbing your face. Is there a reason for that?
No, that's just kind of something that's just clicked there. That's super, super interesting because, therapy, I suppose, was developed initially for pathology, for illness. And the goal was never for people to achieve great things. It was just to get people back to a baseline and just remove some shit. So goals, they didn't care that you were left a bit wandering at the end of it. It's like when someone has a heart attack in a hospital, you give them aspirin and you throw them out, and of course they're left wandering because you haven't done anything. You just brought them back to a rough baseline, and then like, right, next, whatever. But when you build this around a goal, then you have it's like a structure for this personal development to happen. It has to happen in some shape or form, but if you drive it towards a goal, it gives you this structure, it gives you this concrete reason to do it, and it accelerates it, honestly, because you're like, well, when I fix this, then this happens, and I can measure it with this, and then I can do the next level, and you will heal stuff.
Yeah. 100%.
So that was big. I enjoyed that.
Cool. Yeah, it's like I'll say this. One of my Ian, the one that we talked about a couple episodes ago, he said that what he had with therapy in the past, that he would look like the therapy would help him look at his past, but he would just get caught staring at it, so to speak, and he didn't know how to move forward. Like that's the problem a lot of people have, because like what therapy does, a lot of times you go into your past and you kind of look at it, but then you're just kind of caught staring. You don't know how to move beyond that, how to look beyond that. So what we try to do is preemptively create the foundation of what you look at ahead, what you have to look forward to. Just, you can be this person. Let's just get this stuff out of the way, and then you become that person. You just step into it. And that's really the beauty of it.
Yeah. So both therapy and the first round of this will create an awareness. But then the therapy won't necessarily do anything beyond awareness, whereas this will drive you through the first cycle. And then each time you go again, it's a new goal, it's a new set of blocks, it's a new mindset, but it gets easier because you've practiced it, you've done it once. So this is something to be done multiple times on repeat, because there's constant development. Each time it gets easier. There's new problems which come from, what's deep down. But by the time you've done this 10 times and hammered the same insecurity, go on.
I was gonna say I think it's the same problems that manifest in different ways.
That's what I mean.
Problems. Yeah.
But once you hit it 10 times on 10 different cycles, you've really got down to the root cause, not just in I really know what happened to me, but I really know what happened to me. I identified what I needed to do day to day to fix it. And through getting countless reps in, I'm now, maybe it's still there, maybe it's healed, but it's not affecting me anymore. I'm still achieving higher and higher things.
Yeah. The word you said there, the biggest thing, it's not affecting me anymore.
Yeah.
Like people talk a lot of times, like I have this mental wall that I feel like I'm hitting. Like what you do is you turn that wall into a tiny little bump along the road that at first you feel, and the more you go up and up, you're like, oh, I know that bump is there. Okay, that's cool. No worries. All good. Until
it just becomes an ornament that you just, it exists, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Boom. That reached the crescendo.
Yeah, that was a big one. So I want to leave this on a bit of a different note, because like we've given you the tools right now, and I want to go back to where we started, to the whole unreasonable part, because I think it's a really big thing. Like I do not like it when people call me unreasonable. I used to really get angered by it, but now I've kind of been able to be at peace with it, because like, okay, I recognize that's their stuff. It doesn't mean that I have to question myself. And the question I would love to leave the audience with is, what are you afraid to do just because people tell you it's unreasonable? And when are you going to stop letting their stuff interrupt the truth of what you really want? If you can answer that, it's probably going to be the time to drive yourself into some action. Fair?
I have nothing to add.
Awesome. All right. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and we will see you on the next one.
Thank you so much, guys. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Emotional Fortitude Podcast. Please tell a friend if you enjoyed it and found value in it. 3 last things before you go, though. If you feel like someone else with your exact skill set and abilities could be accomplishing more than you currently are, that's a mindset and emotional access issue, And here are 3 ways I'd love to help you conquer any internal limitations, go big, and win. 1. 3 Quick Ideas Tuesday newsletter. It's a weekly email with 3 quick ideas around one aspect of elite performance and how to approach it differently to get better and faster results. People say it's the most thought-provoking and impactful 2 minutes they spend in their inbox each week. It's easy to sign up to and easy to cancel, and you can sign up at itamarand.com/3ideas. 2 is the Emotional Fortitude Micro Course. It will help you build the emotional fortitude and confidently tackle any goal. It's the complete, nothing held back emotional fortitude system in 5 simple parts. It's all under 5 minutes each module. See it, use it, and win. And it's completely free at itamarand.com/course. And number 3, lastly, if you want to dive in and aggressively level up, the Arena Mindset Accelerator might be for you. It's a 6-week intense sprint for entrepreneurs who are up for a dramatic transformation. It's an interactive live program where you'll be working with me in a very hands-on way to get clarity on what you want, build an effective mindset to optimize for your goals, and establish elite emotional fortitude that would allow you to overcome any fear or doubt that could get in your way. You can learn more at itamarmarani.com/accelerator. You can find all of these links in the show notes below or go to itamarmarani.com and have a look around. Until next time, who dares wins.